Hello, and thank you for joining this very special edition of the Global Engagement online series to celebrate UN Day 2020. My name is Rachel Bowen Pittman, and I am privileged to serve as Executive Director of the United Nations Association of the USA. While we all recognize that this year is unlike any other, it was important to us to create a moment that joins us together, even if by virtual means. Whether you're joining us live or watching the recording, whether you're from sunny California, which has hundreds of UNA members, or the only member at large in North Dakota, we welcome you to our event that seeks to inspire, educate, and mobilize Americans to support the United Nations, just like our UNA USA mission. With over 20,000 members in more than 200 chapters across the country, UNA USA are united in their commitment to global engagement and their belief that each of us can play a part in advancing the UN's mission and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. 75 years is a major milestone, so today's program is about reflection, celebration, and yes, a little bit of fun. Before we begin, please note that you may post your questions in the Q&A box located within the navigation bar at the bottom of your screen. In addition, our team will be posting fun facts, resources, speaker bios, and other links within the chat box also located within the navigation bar. And now, who better to hear from about the impact and the critical need for the United Nations than the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres.
As the United Nations marks our 75th anniversary, I wanted to extend a special message to United Nations associations around the world. Thank you. Thank you for being among our best friends and indispensable partners. You are critical to sharing the UN story of advancing peace, justice, equality, health, and human rights for all. That work is more important than ever as we strive to overcome COVID-19 and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The pandemic is a wake-up call. We cannot go back to a pre-COVID world of inequalities and fragilities. And we must do more to respond to a world of challenges ahead, the climate crisis above all. Now is the time to strengthen international cooperation for the common good. Thank you once again for doing just that. Let's keep working together for the future we want and the United Nations we need. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to turn it over to the the National Council Chair, Paula Boland, for UNA USA.
Hello, everyone, and happy UN Day. My name is Paula Boland, and I am proud to serve as the chairperson for the UNA USA National Council and as the president for the UNA National Capital Area. As you just heard from the UN Secretary General, it is up to us, not only as UNA members, but as Americans, as part of a UN member state, to help ensure that we are creating the future we want and the United Nations we need. That is why the theme for this year's UN Day event, Past, Present, and Progress, selected by a special UN 75 committee of the UNA USA National Council, is so appropriate. If you notice, even within the logo for today's UN 75 UN Day celebration, the tagline does not include periods or full stops between the words, but rather arrows. These arrows signify movement and fluidity, the kind that represents people behind them who are passionate and committed to upholding the principles of the UN. It represents our movement, the largest movement of Americans educating and advocating for a strong partnership between the US and the United Nations. During today's program, we have the unique opportunity to experience all three of these elements. They are important to build upon as the United Nations seeks to consider what is next during the decade of action. As a reflection of the present, we will feature the World Health Organization, which has become a very important and well-known UN agency in 2020. It is undeniable that COVID-19 consumes our everyday right now, and Dr. Maria van Kerkhove will help us to set the record straight as America considers its options for the future. And while we look for ways to achieve progress, we could not overlook the fact that over 60% of UNA USA members are under the age of 26. These young people are excited and motivated to advocate on behalf of the United Nations. To share more light on the idea of progress by leveraging the next generation, we will hear from the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, who will inspire UNA members and non-members alike to seek intergenerational opportunities for collaboration. Now, let's go back and revisit the past. In 1943, a passionate group of Americans who were committed to building an organization that could support peace following World War II helped to found what would later be called the United Nations Association of the USA. UNA USA played an instrumental role in the creation of the UN Charter and its ratification by the US Congress, and has continued its important work in key moments supporting the United States and its relationship with the United Nations. And today, this relationship is supported by more than 20,000 UNA USA members across the country who advocate to ensure that the US continues to pay its full dues owed to the United Nations. So much has happened since 1945, when the United Nations emerged from a global crisis. And like most other big buildings right now, only very few are able to walk the hallways of UN headquarters and meet in person. But while we are unable to convene within the building to be inspired and to reflect upon 75 years of history, our friends at the Guided Tours unit within the Department of Global Communications at the United Nations have produced a short video which allow us to once again visit this very important special place.
Welcome to the United Nations headquarters. The headquarters in New York City occupies 18 acres of land and overlooks the East River. 75 years ago, in 1945, 51 countries signed the United Nations Charter in San Francisco. By doing so, the member states agreed to work together to save future generations from experiencing the horrors of another world war. With a substantial donation by John D. Rockefeller Jr., New York was decided to be the city to provide the home for the nations of the world. The site by the East River between 42nd Street and 48th Street was previously occupied by slaughterhouses and surrounded by continuous foul odor, which had to be demolished to make way for the headquarters of the organization. A team of 11 renowned architects, also known as the Workshop for Peace, and led by Wallace K. Harrison of the United States, designed what came to be known as the headquarters of the United Nations. Here in the Security Council chamber, delegates work tirelessly to uphold the goals of the United Nations Charter to maintain international peace and security. Seated around the horseshoe-shaped table, 15 members of the Council meet almost on a daily basis to discuss conflict situations around the world. The chamber was gifted by the Norwegian government and designed by the Norwegian architect Arnstein Arnberg. The blue and gold silk wall coverings and drapes were designed by Elsie Poulsen and depict the anchor of faith, the growing wheat of hope, and the heart of charity. The mural was designed by the Norwegian artist Per Krog.
Here I am in the Trusteeship Council chamber. The role of this council was to promote self-determination of non-self-governing territories. When the UN was created in 1945, there were 11 such territories under the supervision of this council. The last of those territories, Palau, gained independence in 1994. Since then, the work of this council was suspended. Nowadays, this chamber is mainly used for a variety of conferences. The Trusteeship Council chamber was designed by a Danish architect and furniture designer, Finio. After 2011, the chamber was restored and equipped with new furniture designed by Kasper Salto and Thomas Sisgaard. Another iconic aspect of this chamber is the statue titled Mankind and Hope. A girl with arms upraised reaching towards a bird which hovers with outspread wings above her head as a symbol of the country's achieving independence. Carved out of a single piece of teak wood, it was made by a Danish sculptor, Henrike Starke. The Economic and Social Council chamber, also called ECOSOC, is a gift from Sweden. It was originally designed by a Swedish architect, Sven Markelis, who was also part of the team of 11 architects who designed the headquarters. Covering the tall glass windows hangs a curtain by An Edholm, Dialogos, reminding us of the mutual exchange of views on equal terms embodied in the deliberations taking place in this chamber. The architect left the ceiling above the public gallery exposed, intentionally leaving the pipes and ducts for everyone to see, which became a symbolic reminder of the ongoing struggle of economic and social development for all.
The General Assembly is considered the heart of the organization. All 193 member states meet in the General Assembly Hall to address universal challenges that demand global solutions for a better and more sustainable future for all. Every September, heads of states and governments are invited to the general debate to speak about issues that concern member states, addressing the world from the black marble rostrum. The General Assembly works on the basis of equality and consensus. Each member state has one vote, the same number of seats, and delegations sit in English alphabetical order. Simultaneous interpretation into the 6 UN official languages, Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Spanish, and Russian, facilitates the exchange of ideas on how to solve world problems. The United Nations headquarters is filled with artworks donated by member states. One example of such an artwork is the Norman Rockwell mosaic that eloquently expresses our aspirations for fundamental human rights and freedoms for all, without distinction as to sex, race, religion, or language. On the occasion of the 40th anniversary of the United Nations in 1985, the mosaic was presented as a gift by former First Lady Nancy Reagan on behalf of the United States of America. The mosaic was executed by Venetian artists specializing in mosaic works and contains more than 22,000 glass tiles. The mosaic, based on Norman Rockwell's painting The Golden Rule, shows a very diverse group of people standing together and displays the words, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Rockwell wanted to illustrate how Golden Rule was a common theme of all major religions of the world and depicted the people of every race, creed, and color with dignity and respect. After the creation of the United Nations, human rights was a major focus. Members worked hard to find a universal standard for human rights, which previously was considered a domestic concern. In 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. Eleanor Roosevelt was instrumental in coordinating this effort. One of the hidden treasures of the garden is the monument in memory of Eleanor Roosevelt. A granite bench is facing a bas-relief of a flame that bears the inscription, "She would rather light a candle than curse the darkness, and her glow has warmed the world."
We look forward to welcoming you at the United Nations headquarters in person in the near future. Or you may choose to take a virtual tour and online briefing. For more information on our virtual events, please go to visit.un.org.
We appreciate this video, which offers a wonderful reminder of the importance of what happens at UN headquarters in New York City. The meanings behind the artwork and the design of the various chambers reiterate the past 75 years of international cooperation and relationships between so many member states. The statues, sculptures, and paintings reflect the passion, the emotion, and the humanity behind the mission of the United Nations as a collective protector of human rights, peace and security, climate change, equality, and sustainable development. But the work of the United Nations continues outside of the building and the hallways. The United Nations virtual meetings and summits are now broadcast live worldwide and have leveled the playing field to allow the public to attend and participate. The present, as we know, has been seemingly bleak and confusing. But in order to achieve the future we want, you must take note of the current state of affairs and draw upon lessons learned from the 75 years. To set the stage, the present includes the United States submission of a letter to leave the WHO effective July 6, 2021, which will remove the US from having a seat at the table where decisions are made about the global pandemic and preparing for future health crises. In this country, the present includes an alarming number of positive cases and, unfortunately, a politicized debate about how to mitigate and prevent the spread of the disease. Here in the US, as winter approaches and people stay indoors, we are preparing to enter a second wave of positive cases, and many Americans might not strictly adhere to social distancing guidelines. With this present backdrop, I would like to invite Dr. Maria van Kerkhove, the World Health Organization's Head of Emerging Diseases Unit and COVID-19 Technical Lead, to please address the work of the World Health Organization and its role in managing the causes and effects and treatment of COVID-19 across the world. This includes taking a look at both WHO successes, of which there are many, as well as criticisms like of being too close to China and taking too long to declare COVID-19 as a pandemic.
Thanks so much for having me. My name is Maria van Kerkhove with the World Health Organization. I'm in our Health Emergencies Program, and I'm an epidemiologist. I'm the COVID-19 technical lead for this pandemic. I'm going to give you a brief overview about WHO and what we see as the way forward for this pandemic. So first of all, what is WHO? So we're a UN specialized agency. We were founded in 1948. We have 194 member states, which collectively decide with the Secretariat, which I am part of, on global health priorities and actions to save lives and improve health. We have about 8,000 staff members. They're health and other types of experts that are located worldwide, and headquarters here in Geneva, our regional offices across 6 different countries, and 150 country offices. Our Director General, as I'm sure you very well know, is Dr. Tedros. You see his picture there on the right. We work very close with other UN agencies, with all of our UN sister agencies, foundations, academia, NGOs, and the private sector. The objective of WHO is the attainment by all people of the highest possible level of health. And health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. Our priorities are as follows. Our 5 priorities listed here to achieve health for all, and you've heard us talk a lot about universal health coverage, responding to health emergencies, which I'll talk a little bit more about, the well-being of women, children, and adolescents, reducing the health impacts of climate and environmental health, and ensuring that we have a transformed WHO. Currently, we have several public health emergencies that we are working on, and also conflict and attacks are constantly happening in our healthcare systems. Right now, we're working on COVID-19, which of course you know is a global pandemic, Ebola in DRC, and monkeypox in DRC. And we are constantly looking at alerts that are happening that are being reported to us daily. But our main work is supporting countries. We provide technical support to countries that do not have sufficient capacities on their own, but don't be fooled. We provide technical support to all countries everywhere, and our goal is to support everyone everywhere. We monitor and assess global health trends hand in hand with national and regional agencies, and our goal is really to strengthen health systems. We convene multi-sectoral partners. We convene international networks of technical partners, academics, public health professionals, frontline workers, all over the world regularly on a number of topics, and we're doing so with COVID-19 as well. And we fight for political advocacy on global health issues. So a brief overview of where we are in the current epidemiologic situation. What you see here is an epi curve broken down by region. The different colors represent different WHO regions, and some key activities that WHO took in the early stages of this pandemic. On the 1st of January, we activated our incident management team following an alert of a cluster of pneumonia from Wuhan, China. On the 5th, we issued our first notifications to our member states and contact points and publicly about the situation and the public health situation, as well as the actions that countries needed to take. On the 10th and the 11th of January, we issued our first package of technical guidance, which included surveillance guidance, laboratory guidance, clinical management, infection prevention and control. We had a readiness checklist, and we also issued a disease commodity package. And this was leveraging our work on MERS coronavirus, which we quickly adapted to the current situation with a novel coronavirus that was detected in China. On the 30th of January, we declared a public health emergency of international concern, which is the highest level of alert under the international health regulations. A few days later, we issued our first strategic preparedness and response plan, which outlined across 9 pillars of activities the global strategy and the actions that all countries needed to take to combat this virus. And on the 11th of March, we described the situation as a pandemic. But you can see on the epi curve where we were in terms of the global situation. And at that point, there were less than 100 cases outside of China and no reported deaths. To date, unfortunately, we are in a very different situation with more than 41 million confirmed cases reported globally, and tragically more than 1.1 million deaths reported. If we break this down further by region, there are very different situations in each region, and of course, there are very different situations in each country. And here are our 6 regions of the Americas, Southeast Asia, Europe, the Eastern Mediterranean region, Africa, and the Western Pacific. And you can see different epidemiologic patterns that are shown here. But if we look even further, what we are looking at in different countries, there are different transmission situations and scenarios that each country is facing. We break these down into 4 main categories. There are countries that have largely avoided outbreaks. Many island states have avoided the virus having an opportunity to take seed and really take off. We've seen some countries that have had major outbreaks and have brought them under control. We see many countries across Asia and Southeast Asia, that have been able to bring these outbreaks under control. We see a third category of countries that have had major outbreaks, which they have brought under control, brought transmission down to a low level, but once the restrictions have eased, have really seen a resurgence. And this is what we are currently seeing across all of Europe and Canada. And then we have countries that are facing intense transmission and continue to see intense transmission. But if you look at our global strategy, which we outlined early in this pandemic, our global strategy is to suppress transmission, save lives and livelihoods, and that remains our strategy today. Our objectives include mobilizing all sectors and communities to ensure that every sector of government and society takes ownership, responsibility, and participates in the response. To have control, make sure that we control sporadic cases so that they don't become clusters and outbreaks, and that those clusters don't become community transmission. And this is contingent upon rapidly finding and isolating all cases, finding contacts and quarantining contacts, making sure that we have support for individuals and good clinical care for individuals who are in isolation and need that care. Suppressing community transmission through appropriate infection prevention and control measures, population level physical distancing measures when necessary, but really targeted to the most local level, and appropriate and proportionate restrictions on non-essential domestic and international travel. To reduce mortality by providing appropriate clinical care to those affected, making sure that the quality of care is really optimal, and making sure that we ensure the continuation of essential medical services and social services, protecting frontline workers and our vulnerable populations. And of course, we are rapidly working with partners across the globe to develop safe and effective vaccines and therapeutics that can be delivered at scale to those who need it most. This is an overview of what we are currently focused on in terms of suppressing transmission and reducing exposure, reducing mortality to save lives, and really critically to empower individuals and communities for action. It's one thing to tell communities what to do, to engage with communities, but we need to listen. We need to provide a situation in which they are enabled to carry out the actions that governments are putting forth. Much of what we do is through our normative function of developing guidance. And so we've issued hundreds of guidance materials and for our member states, for everyone everywhere to use in their national plans. And this is something that is constantly being looked at, constantly being updated. And science evolves, science grows. We don't have all the answers. We didn't have all the answers then. We still don't have all the answers now, but our work is guided by science. And we are so grateful to our international partners and networks who are helping us to consolidate all of the evidence, turn it into action, and helping countries turn this into the know-how to actually carry out what needs to be carried out to suppress transmission and save lives. We work with a number of partners across this response. It's coordinated with the UN, led by Dr. Mike Ryan, who's coordinating this work. And here are just the number of partners that we work with across our UN agency. So it is very coordinated, and there are regular meetings and discussions about what we are doing and how we need to progress and fight this pandemic together. Couple of last slides here on some of the work that we're looking at as it relates to therapeutics and vaccines and diagnostics. So I'm sure you're well aware of the Solidarity trial that was launched. We've had more than 12,000 patients enrolled in this clinical trial, this multi-site clinical trial, and more than 500 hospitals globally that have participated. We recently published the preprint of the Solidarity trial results, which I'm sure you have seen, looking at a variety of therapeutics. And that trial will continue as we add in different therapeutics to evaluate in an effort to make sure that we have adequate therapeutics to save lives. And as you know, dexamethasone is one of those therapeutics, which we recommend for individuals who have severe and critical disease. And administering dexamethasone for people who are severe saves lives. And then finally, a few slides on the Act A, our Act Accelerator. This is really a bold structure. It's an unprecedented collaboration that we have. You can see the agencies that are involved. We are working with governments, we are working with civil society, we are working with industry on vaccines, on diagnostics, on therapeutics, and making sure we strengthen health systems, but really critically on access and allocation. And we have shared key landmarks in our startup phase, looking at diagnostics. We have rapid diagnostics that have rapid antigen-based tests, which we've negotiated lower pricing and making sure that we have a number of units, 120 million tests that will be available to low and middle income countries. There's a broad portfolio of vaccines, and we have the COVAX facility that is working hard not only to rapidly advance safe and effective vaccines, but making sure that we have access to these vaccines so we have enough for the vulnerable populations and at-risk populations in all countries, as opposed to having just vaccines for only everyone in a few countries. And that's really, really critical. And as I mentioned already, the work on dexamethasone. So what is the way forward? So as we celebrate our 75th anniversary, we call upon global solidarity. We really need strong global solidarity in tackling this virus. No one is safe until everyone is safe, and we need to collectively come together to fight this. It is time for us to put any differences aside and focus all of our energy into using the tools we have right now that suppress transmission and save lives. We've made huge progress over the last 9 months, huge progress. We are not in the same position we were in the spring in the Northern Hemisphere. And we know so much more about what to do. It's about the will to carry that out. And in parallel, we are making sure that we prepare the groundwork for equitable delivery to these for these new technologies and the vaccines that will become available in the coming months and in the next year. Our ACT Accelerator needs $35 billion to realize the goal of producing 2 billion vaccines, 245 million treatments, and 500 million tests over the next year. If this money isn't raised, the global situation to ending this acute phase of the pandemic really is at risk. An effective response really depends on strong and resilient health systems, global solidarity, and strong and resilient populations. This is very difficult, and we are all in this together. We have shown the world that we can eradicate smallpox together, and through solidarity, through science, solutions, and solidarity, we can bring this pandemic to an end. And just a last word to say that no one is safe until everyone is safe, and we really must come together to work together towards this. So really, let's find a way and find that motivation and spread the word to recover together and build back better. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you. If you want more information, you can check out our website and you can look at all of the different platforms by which we release information. And if you would like to donate, we do have a Solidarity Response Fund that you can donate to. And we also have the WHO Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Van Kerkhove, for joining us today and for your service within the World Health Organization. Your words help to better define the current situation that we find ourselves in presently. UNA USA will continue to support WHO, and we encourage our audience to send a message to their members of Congress that withholding from WHO is a short-sighted and dangerous decision. Our country's involvement in WHO is America's best chance at beating COVID-19. We can't beat a global health threat like COVID-19 if we don't beat them everywhere, and that includes in the United States. If you'd like to let your member of Congress know that you would like for the US to remain part of WHO, please click on the link in the chat box below now. This connection between the present or the here and now with the future is essentially our roadmap for how together we can make progress in all areas related to health, human rights, and equity. To speak more on the idea of how we can evaluate and take stock of what's happening right now and be able to convert that to action, I'd like to welcome UNA USA UN Youth Observer Dustin Liu, who will chat with Jayathma Wickramanayake, who serves as the United Nations Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. Dustin is USA's 9th Youth Observer to the UN, and in this role, he works to elevate youth voices in the global policy dialogue around international issues. In her role as an envoy on youth, a position to which she was specially appointed by the UN Secretary General in 2017 when she was only 26, the envoy advocates for increasing youth participation in the intergovernmental space, realizing the potential of young people within the UN system and engaging and mobilizing young people. It is fitting then that Dustin interviews the envoy on youth, as both positions seek to empower and encourage participation of young people and to recognize the positive contributions made by young people in areas such as sustainable development, peace building, and human rights. Dustin, over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Rachel, and a warm welcome to the Envoy on Youth. We are so thrilled that you are here to share your perspective on the idea of progress through your role and your interactions with young people all across the world. And as we celebrate UN 75 in 2020, this past year has been a strong reminder that we need to work together to achieve the SDGs. To start our conversation off, I'm curious if you can share your thoughts on the importance of intergenerational partnerships and how we can further encourage this sort of collaboration.
Thank you very much, Dustin, for having me, and happy UN Day to all of you. It's very important, as Rachel said, to take stock of where we are right now and devise our plans to where we need to go in the next 10 years. End milestone is clear. We need to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, but I think we still haven't fully realized the potential of the young people in our communities. If we take stock, we currently have about 1.8 billion people between the ages of 15 and 24, and half of the world's population is under the age of 30. So we have the largest population of young people our world has ever seen in its history. But are we fully empowering them to be the agents of change that they need to be? Are we fully creating safe spaces for them to participate in social, economic, political activities? Is something that we all need to think about. If we look around the world, we see young people on the streets demanding for climate action, demanding for institutional reform, demanding for political change, democratic transition. But if you really look at the places where actual decisions are made, like the Congress or like the parliaments or like the United Nations, you don't see many young people occupying these seats of decision making. We say half of the world's population is under the age of 30, but only 2% of the world's parliamentarians or congressmen and women are under the age of 30. And an average age of a politician is over 55 years in almost all the continents of the world. So it's very clear that there is an issue when it comes to sharing power. Young people are still seen as, even in the COVID-19 crisis, as the troublemakers, as who are spreading the virus, going out and partying and in the beaches. But in reality, that's only a minority of young people. The majority of young people, like you, Dustin, and your predecessors, have been really creating change in their communities, helping elders, volunteering for charities, fighting misinformation online, running various campaigns to support people affected by COVID-19. So there's a real need to break those myths and misconceptions and truly empower young people to realize their fullest potential.
I fully agree. And I think that time and time again, especially in this COVID-19 crisis, I've seen young people step up. And over the past few months, I've had the chance to connect with these young people and UNA USA members across the country who are advocating on behalf of the UN by raising awareness to the importance of multilateralism and pushing forward the SDGs locally in their own communities. So I'd love to hear from you. How does this work connect to the UN? What impact do volunteers have on the UN system?
I think the COVID-19 crisis was probably a very stark and a timely reminder that we cannot solve the very interconnected, multidimensional global issues on our own. No country, no person can find these solutions to these complex problems alone. As Dr. Maria said at the beginning, before we started, you are not safe until every one of us is safe. And the Secretary General said as well, we are as strong as our weakest link. So the only way to solve the COVID crisis is by cooperation, by cooperating across states, across communities, across countries, across the world, across generations. But unfortunately, we have seen a trend of governments mostly turning away from multilateralism and even blatantly, proactively attacking multilateral institutions. So this is certainly a dangerous trend, particularly given that we live in a world that is so different to 75 years ago when the UN was founded. We are facing the COVID-19 crisis, but we are also facing the climate crisis, huge refugee crises around the world, migratory flows that governments are unable to handle or control, the artificial intelligence, fourth industrial revolution. There are so many unknowns out there that it really makes the point that we all need to come together if we are to find solutions to most of these issues that we haven't even figured out the scale and scope of it. So I want to make this a point to say, Dustin, you mentioned about going around the country virtually and meeting young people who are passionate about these causes. And I really want to say, we need you. We need you, we need your country, we need the United States to be a big supporter of these instruments, actually of which United States was a founding member of, including the United Nations, the Paris Agreement, the Human Rights Council, the WHO. We will not be able to solve these issues without the participation of United States and all Americans equally. So I'm really glad to hear that today we have over 700 members joining. Majority of them are young. And I really hope that you take this message to your communities, your schools, your universities, and inspire your peers to also be a part of this journey.
Absolutely. And I think you put it so aptly, what do you say to the many young Americans who may be watching today and feel like nothing they do or say will make that big of a difference? I know that in a world we're facing so many complex challenges, and it can be overwhelming, the amount of problems that we see around us. Can you share anecdotes that highlight how a young American who might feel disconnected from these larger global issues to the UN system could actually make a positive impact?
I think all the great revolutions in our history has always started with an individual, an ordinary individual doing extraordinary things, right? I will give you two best examples that I've come across in my work. That is, for an example, Malala Yousafzai, how she in her own capacity as a girl advocated and stood up for her right for education. Greta Thunberg, when she started protesting for climate action in front of the Swedish parliament, media first started calling her a crazy person because people thought that she's just one person standing in the cold in front of her parliament who is not going to make a big difference. But look today, how many communities have changed because of Malala's activism. She's become a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Greta Thunberg has created a movement which over 4 million young people participates every Friday, offline and online, advocating for their governments to take climate action. And this has sent waves across the globe for positive, constructive change. So anything that you can do in your capacity, from voting in this election, if you can vote, to writing a letter to your congressman or congresswoman or your senators, to joining a protest, to just living a sustainable, eco-friendly lifestyle on your own, are all small actions that will contribute to a bigger wave of change. So please do not think that switching off the light bulb in your room when you step out is not a big deal, or walking to work or school instead of driving your car is just a small thing. Imagine 7 billion people doing all of these together and voting. It's just one vote you may feel, but that could make a world of difference. So please, please, please get involved, get engaged, and do what you can to do to make that change necessary.
Well, I know that I am leaving this conversation inspired on how young people play a role in pushing forward on these global issues. Thank you so much to the Envoy on Youth for spending a little time with us on UN Day to reaffirm that collaboration and connectivity between young people and people of all ages is the key to progress for all. So thank you for all you do to center and elevate youth voices all around the world. Wishing you continued success in your leadership position.
Thank you, Dustin. All the best to you too.
Thank you, Dustin, and special thanks to the UN Secretary General Envoy on Youth for highlighting stories of intergenerational groups working together in order to achieve lasting, meaningful, and real progress. As UNA USA's National Council Chair, I am excited to oversee this year's award ceremony and to recognize the leaders in our movement. While UNA USA celebrates the work and dedication of its more than 200 chapters across the country, I would like to take a moment to recognize an extraordinary group of members and chapters that have gone above and beyond to drive forward UNA USA's mission of supporting the critical work of the United Nations. And now, let's meet these incredible 2020 award recipients. The Advocate of the Year Award recognizes a member who supports UNA USA many advocacy initiatives, from organizing in-district meetings with their elected officials to participating in our calls to action. I am honored to present the 2020 Advocate of the Year Award to Jillian Borman, President of the UNA Los Angeles chapter.
Thank you, Paula and UNA for this award. It is such an honor. Over the past year, the LA chapter board, members, and myself have had the distinct privilege to work with local nonprofits, government officials, businesses, and individuals who are committed to advancing the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Although much of our world has changed due to COVID, the need for advocacy remains the same. In fact, there is a strong argument to be made that being an advocate for full funding for the UN, human rights, equality, social justice, and the climate has never been more vital to the stability of our nation and the world than it is today. Advocacy is exhausting and rewarding and selfless, and ultimately born out of an optimistic determination that we can do better and be better. It's being the first person to speak up even when your voice is trembling. When it comes to advocacy, there is strength in numbers. So I'd really like to thank every member of UNA USA. This award belongs to all of us.
The Community Chapter of Excellence Award is awarded to a community chapter that has grown its membership, developed programming or campaigns to support UNA USA mission, and conducted both local and national advocacy outreach. I am honored to present the 2020 Community Chapter of Excellence Award to the UNA Broward County chapter.
As a South Florida chapter in the midst of 3 pandemics, actions leading to our selection may have included hardworking chapter members brainstorming, thinking out of the box, and strategic planning. We had 31 cities enact CEDAW through our county commission. We show up, we stand up, we speak up. Our programs prioritize climate change, pandemics, and bridging inequalities. We ask all to become UNA USA lifetime members, give it a lifetime of investment. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you, National Council, for your support and guidance. We are humbled. Thank you.
The Campus Chapters of Excellence Award is awarded to a campus chapter that has gone above and beyond to host various programs, actively recruit, engage, and retain members, and promote advocacy initiatives. I am honored to present the 2020 Campus Chapter of Excellence Award to the UNA Arizona State University chapter.
I'd like to thank all of our members, officers, and our club advisor for helping us create the change in the world we want to see. Change doesn't just happen in the General Assembly Hall of the United Nations. The two words, United Nations, reflect the fact that every single nation in this world holds the ability to create change when they are united under a common goal of global well-being and prosperity. Change starts with you and me, and that idea is what has inspired us at Arizona State University to create change. As youth, we are the future of this world, and we hold the ability to create a better world for the generations to come. I implore everyone watching this, including the youth, to never doubt in your ability to create global change, because individual change and local change is truly global change. Thank you.
The Young Leader of the Year Award recognizes a youth member who has exemplified chapter leadership and is an ardent supporter of UNA USA's many initiatives. I am honored to present the 2020 Young Leader of the Year Award to Bianca Salgado, President of the UNA Whittier chapter.
Thank you, Paula. I first want to start off by saying that I humbly accept this award and want to sincerely thank all the committee members for selecting me as its recipient. I also want to take this moment and thank my parents for supporting me, my mom especially, who she herself is an advocate for disability rights, as I have a sibling on the autism spectrum. She has given me pointers on how to be a strong advocate for all the causes I am passionate for, especially when it was time to go to Capitol Hill during our Global Leadership Summit, or also when we visit our elected officials for in-district meetings. And last but not least, to everyone of our membership who I have met in all our annual summits and locally from Southern California, who are passionate, driven change makers and who I call my dearest friends. As a member of UNA USA for 4 years now and completing my first term as the president of a community chapter, I appreciate all the community engagement I have seen that relates to the achievement of the SDGs, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, being fulfilled in all different capacities within the local scope of our communities. My advice for everyone who is watching is to not be afraid to speak up. Your voice is the most powerful tool you have. This platform encourages and welcomes all of us to share how we feel about causes such as human rights, gender equality, climate change, and more. I encourage you all to take risks and to continue to dare yourself to do more. Within your chapters, both campus and community, ask to extend the table or bring a chair for yourself. Thank you again for this award. I share this with all the young people who are creating change daily in our shared world. Let's all fight the good fight as activists collectively.
Finally, the Arnold Goodman Lifetime Achievement Award recognizes a longtime volunteer leader for their continued support of UNA USA's mission. This member has served more than 10 years as a chapter leader and has previously served on the UNA USA National Council. I am honored to present the 2020 Arnold Goodman Lifetime Achievement Award to Joseph Baxter, President of the UNA Connecticut chapter.
Thank you very much, Paula. This award really reflects a whole heritage and tradition here in Connecticut. 80 years, 90 years, going back to Eleanor Roosevelt's arrival and conference with 900 Connecticut residents, beginning a first chapter in the state. I think of Arnold and Rita, and 3 characteristics stand out in their lives. The first being a real spirit of intercultural toleration, a passion for understanding differences, and third, commitment to work for collaboration between governments to create a world that would be just and peaceful. It has been a sense of inviting a very global perspective towards life. And Rita and Arnold Goodman, to me, reflect being global citizens. I like to identify my own life and my own efforts as one of seeking to be truly American, but at the same time, a global citizen. Ban Ki-moon would often say, now is our time. Yes, this is our time to make a difference. Clarify your vision, seek it with passion, and trust that the opportunity to do small efforts for good that are constructive will open the door to significant moments happening for yourselves, for our country, for our world. I believe that the United Nations is a means towards that happening. Thank you for this privilege to be with you.
Congratulations to all of our 2020 award recipients. Your work and commitment is certainly very inspiring to us all at the UN Association of the USA. Our movement of building a strong US-UN partnership has never been more critical. And as we celebrate the milestone of the 75th anniversary of the UN, we're coming together across the country to work for a better world.
Congratulations to these truly exceptional members and chapters. UNA USA is bigger, bolder, and quite honestly better because of our members, their programs, and ultimately their dedication to supporting the life-saving work of the United Nations. And a special thank you to Paula Boland for her extraordinary support of UNA USA as a leader on both a local level as president of UNA NCA and at a national level as the UNA USA's National Council Chair. Today, you've heard from experts and changemakers about the current state of our world and what action is needed to create a brighter future that works for everyone, everywhere. Now it's your turn to get involved, and we have several calls of action just for you today. The first action is a simple but meaningful one. Text UN75 to 30644 to send a message to your elected officials asking them to support full US funding for the UN and its agencies. The US must work together with the world to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, uphold and protect human rights, act boldly to protect the planet, eradicate poverty and hunger, and so much more. For those of you who are ready to take your advocacy action to the next level today, join us after this program to participate in our National Call-In Day. All day long, we are calling our members of Congress to let them know that we need the UN as much as the UN needs the US. Click the link in the chat box now to learn more. If you are inspired by what you saw and heard today, please join the UNA USA movement. The US needs the UN and UNA USA needs you. There are so many reasons and benefits to joining the movement of more than 20,000 Americans, which you can find if you click on the Join Now link in the chat box. And if you are a current UNA USA member, we launched the +1 campaign, which encourages current members to add a new member to multiply our impact. This campaign ends tomorrow, so be sure to click the link in the chat box now to participate. And to our audience, thank you for joining us for this very special edition of the Global Engagement Online Series. We hope our program today inspired, educated, and hopefully encouraged you to mobilize on behalf of the critical work of the United Nations as we recognize its 75th anniversary. We wish you all a very happy UN Day. Thank you.